Hi there. For over a week now, Ukraine has been witnessing one of the worst chapters in its history. Russians are on its territory, and the parliamentarians and civilians have been forced to pick up arms. We're joined by one such brave, the youngest parliamentarian of Ukraine, Sviatoslav Yurash, to help us understand the ground situation and take us through what's happening and what should happen to his country. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I must say that the world is in solidarity with whatever is happening in Ukraine right now and saluting the valor with which you all are fighting the Russian aggression. So, starting with what is the ground situation, Yorosh? How would you define what's happening outside your window?
Thank you very much for your interest. As far as situation, we are basically fighting on all different front lines. We have 1,000-kilometer border with Russia. We have 500-kilometer border with its proxies in Belarus, and we have a coastline which is basically getting attacked by various attempts for them to land Marines, as well as to try and go from Crimea and to seize the shoreline. Basically, as far as the battles, we are counterattacking at the moment, but they are trying to siege several major towns around Ukraine. They are developing a salient in north of Kiev, streaming from Chernobyl nuclear power station, and they are trying to stop our supply routes to the west and to the south. And we are currently battling to keep those towns Ukrainian, not allow them to try and take over that supply route.
So Russia has been on and off going ahead and announcing these ceasefire agreements and talking about providing a human corridor for evacuation. How much is it happening on ground? Do you think they're abiding by what they're saying and promising?
Russia has shelled the humanitarian convoy day in, day out. There was a third time they was tried, and again it was shelled. Russia has lied and lied and lied once again. So we are in no illusions as far as Russian intention to keep its promises.
I understand what you're saying because we have been witnessing the same kind of human pain and agony in the eyes of Indian students who've been stranded across several countries, several cities in Ukraine right now. And we completely understand the pain that every Ukrainian would be facing right now. How would you define the living situation and living condition over there in terms of basic amenities like food, water, electricity, and in fact, safety with the civilians being targeted?
Nothing is enough, nothing is too much, all is needed, all is welcome. The reality is that life has been upside down, and plenty of things that have been pretty standard are lost at the moment. So the point is that life is being restructured. For example, money doesn't have real value anymore. It's mostly barter that everybody's turning to as far as trying to get basic amenities. And we are trying to help with the humanitarian situation as well, providing various different lines of support of food, clothes, and whatever else people need in their daily lives to maintain life as well as possible.
What kind of a humanitarian aid are you getting from the West? Are you getting supplies in terms of food and other medicines?
The reality is the announcements were plentiful of different kinds of aid, both in terms of humanitarian sort, military sort, financial sort, and the point of following all that is quite impossible because there was a stream of messages and they are getting here every single day. The fact of the matter is the more images come in from Ukraine to the West, the more it sees the dire need to try and help the situation in different ways. But there are many more ways that we actually need the help as far as fighting second biggest army in the world.
Exactly. That takes me to my next question. That you have been putting up a brave front against one of the biggest military forces in the world, but for how long do you think you can sustain against Russia, considering the valor and considering the fact that they have deployed 95% of their massed troops into into Ukraine right now?
The reality is it is our country. We know where to go, know where to leave. We are fighting for it with everything we've got. So the point is, no matter how much Russia puts into our country, we shall fight back at every step. Basically, again, we will not accept Russian occupation, Russian annexation, Russian attempts to destroy our statehood or our nation. So we will fight back. And again, it takes much more to destroy a nation of 40 million people, the biggest nation in Europe.
Right. So, how do you see this war ending? It's already been 12 days. It's still counting, with the Putin now considering it to be more of an ego war. He doesn't want to be cowed down by sanctions or any other possibilities that he's facing right now. How do you see it ending?
Well, the reality is that we are preparing for everything, anything. Putin has used, for example, vacuum bombs in Kharkiv, where a lot of Indian students lived. He has looked at and threatened various different means to try and push the West by, for example, trying to mine nuclear power stations in Ukraine. And the reality is that this war has many unknowns at the moment, so it's very hard to truly pin down the exact future of this conflict. It can end any moment if there's a revolution in Russia and they throw away Mr. Putin's regime out of power, but that doesn't seem to happen. So the reality is that Mr. Putin is taking the long steps into the direction of prolonging conflict, such as, for example, in Russia, they will stop the internet from the 11th of March. So the
Mhm.
point here is that we are truly in an unknown, uncharted territory as far as the future is concerned.
What about the talks which are going on in Belarus right now? Do you trust that there's something which will come out of the peace talks?
The only point that we agreed to, humanitarian corridors, has not been kept to by the Russians time and time again. So the point is we cannot truly make any clarity on those agreements. What Russia is demanding there basically are so that we submit, we capitulate, and or else we shall not do that. We shall fight to our last.
Understood. What are your terms for a ceasefire? How would you want to put forward
For
your view?
Russians to get out, for Russians to get out of our country and leave us to define our future. That's as simple as
That's
that. We are a nation
so
trying to be free. That's it. Russians are trying to take their freedom away from us. We will do everything in our power to prove to this point to the Russians of the world that we are the nation that wants its freedom, no matter the cost, no matter the time. Our ancestors were fighting this chance and they won. Now it is our turn and we shall win too.
what about the West in this whole scenario? Do you think they've lived up to their expectations and promises that they've kept? I mean, they have not still agreed on the no-fly zone that Ukraine has been asking for.
The reality is that there's a good saying about the Western response is the West always does the right thing after exhausting all their options. So again, we are thankful for everything we're getting, but nothing is enough, nothing is too much, and we need all as far as battling one of the world's biggest armies.
Mhm. How do you see India stand in all this? Currently, India is condemning the situation in Ukraine, but it's abstained from voting against Russia. What message do you have for the Indian authorities? The Prime Minister spoke to President Zelensky in the morning.
The story between Russia and the world, basically, that in Ukraine it's not just Ukrainian future that's decided. The reality is the international world order now is decided upon. So if this situation is ignored and let go, what you will get in the end is the collapse of those maxims that existed in the world of international relations. So the point here is that it's not just Ukraine you have to consider, but the fact that this will cause plenty of other countries to try and consider other actions which can disrupt much more of the international world order, even in Asia as well. So the point here is to respond to Russia, violate of every single rule that is in the international community as what it deserves to become, an outcast from every single institution that's a part of. As far as India and Russia, you have a strategic agreement defining your partnership on various different points. It's question why should that be in place if again every single precipice of that relationship is based upon trust and Russia is breaking that trust in all different ways and means all around the world. So the point here is to consider that and to try and look at the facts, both humanitarian coming up from the images you're getting in India and from facts on the ground that Russia is not to be trusted.
Do you think Russia himself, in fact, Putin himself, has been facing a lot of resistance back home? Is it Russia's war or is it Putin's war?
It is Putin's war, absolutely. As far as Putin's position is concerned, he's very consistent about Ukraine, that he doesn't want it to exist, that he doesn't believe our nation exists, and that he wants to consume us whole. The point is that we shall do everything and anything in our power to prove to him that we do exist, and we shall definitely fight on. And I'm glad the world is looking at us and looking at the situation and trying to help us determine our future and to try and build the momentum for the chance at sovereignty. So as far as Putin himself is, again, I truly believe that if Putin is thrown out of the picture, you can try and reconsider the relationship with the Russians in general. A day before the invasion started, I had a conversation with the opposition figures in Russia, actually, and talking about that relationship and all that. And again, I am a believer that you can try and repair the relationship. But again, Putin has strained it for eternity, if not forever.
Talking about President Zelensky now, he's emerged as a very strong, powerful leader who's actually leading from the front. How would you define him? How has his leadership grown in the past few months that we've seen his valor coming out in the open?
Zelensky embodies our spirit. This is our nation. We know where to go, and we shall fight for it. He doesn't want to leave. He doesn't want to flee. He wants to continue on battling for our country. That is attitude for all Ukrainians that I meet, that I talk with, that I try and build the plans to have this or that operation to help resist here in Kiev. Zelensky is just the epitome of that the world sees very clearly. We are a defiant nation that will give anything and everything to have that future we have fought for centuries.
Thank you so much. In the end, do you have any message for the world through our medium? Do you want to say something to Indians and across the world, people who will be watching you?
I hope this tragedy helps the world to finally see Ukraine for what it is, a vibrant nation that truly wants to define its future, and that we can have that relationship with the world without any mediators that will destroy us, such as Russia, and that we can finally get our place in the international community in which we can directly build the relationship with India, and that we can develop that understanding about each other in this dramatic century of ours. So thank you very much for your interest.
Thank you so much for your time and stay safe. Please take care. Thank you so much for talking to us.
All the best. Bye.